Hey guys, Prowl 1701 here, and today we're going to talk about the ratings for season 2 of Doctor Who so far. They're not looking good. They're not looking good. Um, and this is coming from someone who's enjoyed these first two episodes. But they are on a downward trajectory, not only from episode 2, from episode 1, but also from last season. We have got the consolidated now for the Robot Revolution with 3.57 million. The overnight was 2 million. Now, I do think overnights aren't as big a deal as they used to be because the episode does drop on the iPlayer first. So there's a lot of people who aren't going to wait for it to broadcast at night in the UK or that evening. They're going to watch it there. I understand the overnights being a little lower. This is the number that matters to me, the 3.5 million. That is the 7-day consolidated number. I believe it includes the iPlayer views, and it also has, you know, cell phone, iPad, all of that is figured in. And it only grew about 1.57 million, although I do think that's about what it does. I think it's generally around 1.5, 1.3, 1.7. Somewhere in that 1.5 range typically is what it seems to be, from what I've seen. That's still not very good for a consolidated number. Just over 3.5 million. We also have the overnights, of course, for Lux, which have dropped to 1.58 million, which is the lowest overnight Doctor Who has ever had. The first time Doctor Who has ever dropped below 2 million for an overnight, beating the previous record, which again was held by the previous episode. Again, accepting that the fact this drops on iPlayer earlier is going to affect those numbers. But I feel like all of those numbers should be included here, and that number is still far lower than it needs to be. Now, I get the landscape's different. I'm not expecting it to get City of Death numbers. I'm not. I don't expect any Doctor Who story to get City of Death numbers. No Doctor Who story ever has. I'm not expecting it to get Voyage of the Damned numbers. I get things are different. I don't know if I buy all the excuses of the weather's really nice out. Because, quite frankly, people who want to watch Doctor Who are going to watch Doctor Who. That's always been my argument. People who want to watch Doctor Who are going to watch Doctor Who. If in these 7 days they didn't get a chance to watch Doctor Who, it's probably because they didn't want to watch Doctor Who. You have to be very tied up that you can't find 45 minutes in a week to watch Doctor Who. Unless you've got 4 kids or 3 jobs, which I totally get. My best friend has 4 kids. But, you should have time to watch it, and only 3.57 people in the UK apparently did. Now, we compare this to last year. Let's go over here and look at the numbers for last year. Here we go. We look at the first 2 episodes, and now the overnight for episode 1 for Robot Revolution was 2 million. For Space Babies, a far inferior episode, far inferior, the overnight was 2.6, so about 600,000 higher, and the 7-day consolidated was 4 million instead of 3.5 million. So you're still looking at about a drop on the consolidateds of a little over 400,000 compared to where we were a year ago. And then the big one is episode 2, Devil's Cord, which is a nice episode. I think I do prefer Lux a little over Devil's Cord, but I found both of them to be enjoyable episodes. Whereas Devil's Cord had 2.4 for the overnights, Lux only had 1.58, I believe it was. That is a huge difference. That's a difference of almost a million. Almost a million. We're talking about 800,000 here. That is a huge drop from episode 2 to episode 2. Also notice that the drop from episode 1 to episode 2 is only about 200,000, whereas for season 2, it went from 2 million to 1.57 million, a drop of a little over 400,000. So you had a greater drop, over twice as much of a drop between episode 1 and 2 in season 2 than you did in episodes 1 and 2 of season 1 right here. And then if you look here, none of these numbers got quite below 2 million. A couple of them came close. Rogue, Dot and Bubble, and Legend of Ruby Sunday got close. And they also have the lowest consolidated, with the lowest being Dot and Bubble, oddly enough, which is very surprising to me considering Dot and Bubble was a popular episode. And a really good episode. That was my favorite episode of the season. Which just goes to show that you can't always go by ratings for what you enjoy. I mean, there were several classic stories that didn't get the best ratings that are absolutely phenomenal. The War Games doesn't have the best ratings in the world, but it's phenomenal. So don't always let the ratings judge what you should like and shouldn't like. So we have some of these hitting around where the consolidated for Robot Revolution is, and even higher than a couple of these, actually. Higher than these three, just slightly. And then, of course, the special, I'm not sure if that's supposed to be the Church on Ruby Road or Joy to the World. I suspect Joy to the World, which shows that on overnights you can still get high numbers. These people who are like, that's the way TV is now. You just can't get these high numbers. You have to look at how it does next to everything else. And I get, to a degree, you do have to look where it does next to everything else. I get none of the shows get the numbers they used to. Coronation Street's not going to get the numbers it did in the 80s. I get that. But it still shows you can get much higher numbers than what Doctor Who is getting when you have 4 million and a consolidated of almost 6 million, which is considerably higher. And people are like, well, it's Christmas. And I'm like, yeah, people are doing a lot of other stuff on Christmas. They have to take time out of their day to watch this. There's a lot going on Christmas. Let's go back real quick. There we go. So let's go back to this. 2 million, consolidated 3.57, and Lux having the lowest ever with 1.58. The 1.58 is concerning. I firmly believe that an episode, how good an episode is always going to affect next week's overnights. Because if an episode is bad, you might be less inclined to tune in next week. Whereas if an episode is really good, you might be more inclined to tune in next week. So I always feel like an episode's overnights are going to be partly affected by the episode that preceded it. So these numbers could be this way because people were put off about Empire of Death, or maybe they didn't like Joy to the World. So maybe a lot of them didn't come back, and that explains why this number's lower. A lot of people might have had problems with some of the things in Robot Revolution, so maybe they tuned out for Lux, which is a shame. Lux is a good episode, especially visually. It's visually so impressive. But people might have tuned out, and this number for Lux might be lower because of some dislikes some people might have had for Robot Revolution, which I personally enjoyed. And people are like, well, Prowl, you just don't get it. You can't get those high numbers anymore. I get that. I'm not expecting it to get 10 million, 13 million, none of that. But the argument that this is good, that these numbers are good, I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I'm going to tell you why I don't buy it. Because the specials were getting higher numbers than this a year and a half ago. Like double these numbers. More than double these numbers. We're going to look at that in a second. And, you know, they might not have been getting 10 million views, but they were getting a lot better than this. I feel like people are lowering the bar so much that, dear Lord, I'd hate to try to limbo under it. And at some point, you have to realize, no, this is a standard we need to be at. You know, there are certain viewing numbers we need to get because the viewing numbers can very much affect whether or not the show continues and whether it doesn't, and also whether Disney wants to re-up for another season of it. I feel like the ratings are going to matter about whether or not Doctor Who continues. I'm not saying they're going to be the whole thing. I know Doctor Who is a huge export business for the BBC. I know it's like their number one export business now with Top Gear gone. So I'm sure they're inclined to, hey, we need to do more of this for the money. But I'd like to think these have got to figure into it. And I know Disney must have some expectations that they want to see achieved if they want to give the BBC more money. Let's go up here and look at the specials. So here are the specials. And this must be Church on Ruby Road. So we have David Tennant's specials, the 14th Doctor, the 60th anniversary specials. And the overnights are 5 million, 4.8, and 4.6. Notice they're getting progressively lower. And then it jumps back up a little bit for Shooty's first story because it's Shooty's first story, but only jumps up slightly. Notice all of these are on a downward trend. That's not good. I'm not saying it's not understandable. A lot of times the first episode for a season does have higher numbers, just like a season finale has higher numbers. But look how much higher these numbers are than what we're getting now with 2.5, 2.1, 2.0, 1.57. And then you look at the consolidateds, 7.6, 7.1, 6.8 and a half, 7.4. Keep in mind, this is a Shooty Gatwa episode. And then you look at the consolidateds for season 1. And they're usually in that 3 million range. 3.5, 3.6, 3.9. Or you look at the consolidated for the Robot Revolution, 3.57. And you compare them to 7.6, 7.1, 6.8, 7.4. And this is a year and a half ago. This isn't 10 years ago. This isn't the Russell T. Davies 1 era. This isn't City of Death. This isn't the Pyramids of Mars omnibus. This is a year and a half ago. And we're getting half these numbers now. Or in some cases, less than half these numbers now. Less than half in a year and a half. There's a problem. Well, it placed 4th on the night. Good for it. It's still getting half the numbers it was a year and a half ago. Half! I don't know what else I can say to get across to you that that's not good. If your audience is half what it was a year and a half ago, there's the problem. And you keep in mind that it's on a downward trend. Now, again, it poked just slightly back up for the Christmas special, Shooty's first episode. People probably wanted to check out the new Doctor, especially the first black main Doctor. People wanted to see that. Remember, Jodie Whittaker's first episode had 10 million views. Or 10 million for what it's consolidated. And then it just kind of went down from there. And it didn't spike much. Only about, 90,000? Oh, no, 110,000. I'm doing my math wrong there. 110,000. Not a lot. Not a huge spike. Mostly it's a downward trajectory. Then we go back here. And it's another downward trajectory from there. Now it jumps back up a little bit after Boom. Probably because Moffat came back. And then another downward trajectory to right back up. Because it's the season finale. And then actually pretty decent for the Christmas special. Once again, consolidated, you see it dropping, shooting back up for 73 yards. Also probably coming off Boom with Moffat back. Trending down. Oddly enough, Rogue doing very strongly in the consolidated. Rogue actually did pretty well for the consolidated, I think. Well, about 1.4, about what they do, 1.4, 1.5. Oddly enough, Dot and Bubble did not have a strong consolidated, with only about 1.2? But you see the numbers trending downward until we go to where we are now. And lo and behold, the numbers have... Oh, wrong one. That's what I want. There we go. And lo and behold, the numbers have trended downward again. They're even lower than they were last season. And people are like, well, viewing habits have changed since last year? Really? Keep in mind that the overnights are lower. Both of the overnights are lower than any stories from last year. Has television changed that much in a year? Really? Now, granted, you had a couple of them close to this. You had, a 2.02, a 2.11, a 2.12. There were a couple of them that were low, that were close. But the point is, your audience is still shrinking. That's the numbers. That's how numbers work. See, that's the thing about numbers. They're pretty accurate. They're numbers. And I'm not saying people can't fudge numbers to lie, but I am saying what these numbers reflect is down from last year. Though, to be fair, the consolidated here is stronger than some of the consolidated from last season, most notably, oddly enough, Dot and Bubble. And I think even a little above Rogue and 73 yards. But definitely a downward trend. What's going to be interesting is seeing the consolidated for Lux, because I'm only expecting it to barely get past 3. Now, I'm hoping good word of mouth of Lux will strengthen that, because I do think from what I've seen online and on Twitter, people seem to be pretty on board with Lux. I haven't heard too many people talking bad about it. It seems pretty well universally liked, if not loved, then liked. So I think maybe it'll have some strong consolidated numbers. Won't break 4. No way it's breaking 4 million. But I would like to see if maybe it could match this. I don't think it will. I don't think it's going to get 2 million. I'm expecting 1.5 to 1.7 in consolidated added onto this. I do think it'll cross 3 million, but I don't even think it's going to reach this number, because that's such a drop off. You're dropping off over 400,000 people between episode 1 and 2, and that is cause for concern. Because as much as everyone wants to say things are different now, the viewing landscape is different now, and if you're comparing it to Classic Who, that's fair. If you're comparing it to David Tennant's old era, Russell T Davies 1, that's also fair. But when you're comparing it just to last season and the specials from a year and a half ago, the numbers are still down. And the landscape hasn't changed that much in a year, or that much in a year and a half. And the numbers are still down, especially in the overnights. It's going to be interesting to see what the consolidated do. The consolidated is on the lower end of where we were last year, so not too much of a drop. That's actually pretty consistent for around where we were last year, for the lowest parts of last year, I should say. But still down from where episode 1 was in the consolidated last year, where it was over 4 million. So yeah, I think this is something we need to keep an eye on. I also say that don't let these numbers affect what you think of the episodes. I like both of the episodes this season to varying degrees. I haven't disliked either of them, so I'm not going to let their low viewing figures affect my enjoyment of them, and you shouldn't either. But it is important to know these numbers, because I feel like they could definitely have an impact on the future of the show. So I want to know what you think. Comment down below. Let's talk about it. Don't forget to click the like button, the subscribe button, all that fun stuff. A link to the Patreon is down there as well if you would like to support me on that. That is a big help with bills. I certainly appreciate it. I want to give a shout out to some of my top tier patrons: Colin Coney, Sam Venning, Unknown289, and Finn Perkins. I appreciate their support, as I do the support of all of my patrons. I have a P.O. box down there if there's anything you'd like to send me to look at and review. A link to the Amazon wish list is down there. A link to the Amazon UK wish list is also down there as well. Most importantly, thank you for watching.